Hello, am I on? It's me again. We are about to get started with our very exciting and, as Kat pointed out, very, very stacked panel, the Local Legends panel. In a couple minutes, couple seconds, people are making their way. Sorry about the lack of chairs. Hopefully we can rotate through. There is one up here, there are three up here, four. I see 4 chairs, 5. Don't be shy to sit at the front. Excellent. So I want to say a great big thank you once again to Taya Yukon. If you want to thank Taya Yukon in person, this is Coralie for sponsoring the catering. And of course to Alley Cat Catering for bringing all the delicious food. It was really, really good. So this commences our Local Legends panel. And you're probably wondering why I called it a Local Legends panel. It's because you probably already know these 3 people. I'd like to introduce Katie from Klondike Kettle Corn, Ben from Neighbourly North, and Joella Hogan from Yukon Soaps Company, and I'll let them talk about themselves, but I just want to address that I decided to call this Local Legends because these folks have carved out spaces and niches for themselves, both in the digital space. So they have great websites, they have great online presence, they have great presence on TikTok and Instagram and all the things, but they've also carved out really, really special and meaningful places for themselves in our community too, and in the communities that they come from. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit today as well. But with that said, I'll let our panelists introduce themselves. So Katie, you're closest to me. Why don't we start with you?
Hi, I'm Katie. I run a business called Klondike Kettle Corn. We started at the Fireweed Market in 2010, and now we are selling, you would not believe how much popcorn in the Yukon, and just starting to export outside to Alberta and BC.
Ben?
Yeah, my name's Ben. I run a company called Neighbourly North. We're like a short-term rental property management company, kind of a local alternative to Airbnb and VRBO. We're multi-destination in that we have properties in both Whitehorse and Yellowknife. In total, it's about 150 rooms that are used primarily for extended stay lodging, both corporate travel and consumer kind of tourism. And we got our start in Whitehorse about 2.5 years ago.
And Joella?
Yeah, Joella Hogan from Mayo, and I create handcrafted soap and natural wellness products. I always get confused actually whether I started 10 or 12 years ago because time is so brutal. Somewhere in there, I guess, but I bought the business. So the brand has been in the Yukon for over 25 years now, and so I took that and moved it to another community and just continued to grow it. So in many retailers in the Yukon, but also across Canada and starting to export outside of Canada as well.
Amazing. So I want to start by engaging the crowd. Who in this crowd has a website for their business? Raise your hand. Cool. Okay, so for those just starting out, I want to ask a general question. For those who have a business and are just starting out, where should they start? And I want to start with you, Ben.
Yeah, I guess if you're just, in the very earliest stages of a company, I think maybe one of the most important processes is just understanding your customer and doing really in-depth customer discovery. For us, the problem that we wanted to go about solving was really obvious in that, I'd spent many years down south and traveling abroad, just kind of seeing where the lodging industry was going and kind of recognizing that, there is a gap in the market for this certain kind of lodging product back home. And so if you're in the early stages, you might not, it might not be completely clear exactly, what problems you're solving and for who, and spending as much time as possible doing customer discovery is an important step.
And I want to move on to you, Joella. So you bought your business in either 2010 or 2012. We're not 100% sure. But just similar to the question I asked Ben, take us back to the day. I know you inherited your website, but take us back to the day before you decided to launch your website and walk us through that process. What brought you to that point in your business?
So before I created a new website?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I think that I was so focused on all of the other aspects of the business that I hadn't really thought about the website and where some of those sales were coming from. And so I didn't put a lot of attention to it right away, that I was so focused on learning how to make soap and how to do invoices and how to do marketing and those kinds of things. I didn't focus on the website, but it didn't take me long to realize that it was really outdated and needed like a brand refresh as well. And so I think it just took a few months before I invested the time and effort to really get like good pictures and a story out there for people to connect to.
Okay, great. I want to come back to that later, especially the part about putting the time and investment into getting good pictures. But I want to come over to you, Katie. Your story is a little bit similar. You started at the fireweed market in 2010. Can you walk us through a little bit how you came to have like the amazing website that you have today? And I want to just highlight that really quickly on our slide deck here. We have Katie's website. We'll see if this, oh yeah, I'm so proud of this like scrolling thing that I embedded in Canva. Look at that, so great. Those nice quotes. We have a color theme. So Katie, walk us through the point at which you like decided that you wanted to invest into having a website like this. Oh, look at, that's so awesome.
So there were a few catalysts, I guess, to getting to a point where I needed to have a website. My business has been a very slow growing one. Like we started in 2010 at the market, and it started with like just a summer gig every Thursday. And at the same time, I was having kids, and so kind of taking a step back from the workforce. And then I would say it was in 2018 or 19 when I decided to fully commit to Klondike Kettle Corn. And so I went to ECDev and got some funding through the Enterprise Trade Fund. And through that, I worked on 3 major things together: photography, a marketing strategy, and website design, including e-commerce. So I think my main catalyst was that, okay, now I'm going to start focusing more time and energy into this business. And then also to add like a direct to customer option, because we had mostly experimented with, besides the market, mostly wholesale sales. So this was like our way to get back to the direct customer sales. And then also just for having a place where all my information was available. So even if I didn't have the e-commerce, it provided a lot of the answers that people were reaching out to me and asking. So now getting back to emails, I could link in my website, and it would give people a good, overall story of who I am, what this company is all about. We're more than just popcorn, and yeah, share my story kind of that way.
And you do a great job of that. Look at all those tabs: home, our story, our community, and I want to come back to community as well. But we've heard a couple keywords so far. We heard export from the 3 panelists. We heard wholesale. I want to get a little bit technical as well. Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were in Spain when you decided to start this company and created your first iteration of Neighbourly North. I might be selling you out a bit here, but I think you're in Spain, maybe in a villa.
Yeah, well, yeah, the conversation that we had there, I kind of had like the light bulb went off idea while I was backpacking through Patagonia. But after a couple months of just kind of sitting on the idea, I incorporated the company while I was in Morocco and continued to work on it while I was traveling through
Sounds
Spain
terrible.
and Portugal.
I was in my shop, in my garage.
Joella, were you in your basement?
Oh, it's totally in my
yeah.
basement. Yeah. Take his advice.
That's great. So the reason, Ben, I'm asking you this is your website and your brand was built in the beginning of COVID in 2020, and so you've been digital from the start. Katie, I know that you bought your big popcorn, what do you call it? Cauldron?
The big kettle.
Kettle.
Yep.
And Joella, you were making soaps in your basement. Ben, what's unique about you is that you started like I said, in the pandemic, and you started with digital. You were literally creating your business remotely. So can you tell us, with such a digital business, how do you make sure in your day-to-day that everything gets done and nothing gets missed?
Yeah, I think, having, I guess, digital relationships with your customers, whether it's sales or customer service or even just collaborating internally as a team, it's an investment, and it's a learning process to make sure that you are using all the right digital tools to collaborate and share work and be able to delegate and coordinate together. So yeah, I guess our process is kind of demo everything. When we see a new software that we're not familiar with, we demo just about everything, and if we think it's a good fit, then we try to implement it.
Great, and I just want to shout out that the QR codes that you see on the top right middle of all of these pages that I'm pulling up are these people's websites if you want to take a deeper dive and see what they do. But I'm behind you, Ben, I'm not sure if you know this, but I was showing how easy your website is to use and how great it is and how well laid out and intuitive. If anyone wants to book in Carcross, that's how much it costs. It's a beautiful property. But that's great. So you're telling us right now that the trick for you is to make sure that you have these digital systems in place to make it easier on your end. Joella, I know that when we talked, you said that a big shift for you was using a certain software and making it easier on the back end. Can you speak a little bit to how that was worth the investment and streamlining things for your business?
For sure. So that was early in the pandemic when things were shifting to online, and I shifted to Shopify because I needed the back end. I was mostly here with my folks, but I had a team helping in Mayo, but I needed the back end ease, I guess, of an app like Shopify. But it took a lot of time and effort to get better photos and just the right copy and those kinds of things, because what I quickly learned was people were taking those images and copy and putting that out into the internet, and so making sure everything was spelled correctly, and that's what I wanted the world to know was super important too.
So having that element of your website helped you probably save time to focus on your community and your team and
Totally.
fostering those connections.
Yeah.
So another word that's come up a couple times now is team and community, and I know that these three people, like I said at the beginning, focus on that as well as focus on the digital space. Katie, you started at the Fireweed Community Market.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about the community that you've been able to create both with your business and using the digital space ultimately?
For sure. So I always say that I feel like the community helped build my business, because there are so many things that have gone into it that have not just been my ideas, but ideas that people have brought to me. And other things that have just been inspired by working with other vendors and being a part of the Fireweed Market. So for example, as far as like products go, early on I think it was Northwest Tel was one of the first people to come up to me and be like, hey, if we could get you to make little tiny bags and put our sticker on them. And I was like, yeah, I can do that, totally. And those are our promo bags. They've become a really popular product for us to collaborate with other local businesses. Neighbourly North, we've got a label for them, and they're putting our popcorn in their places. So ideas like that have come from the community to help build us up. And then another example might be through the Fireweed Market Board. I sit on the board, and one of the goals that we had with the market was to help encourage collaboration between vendors, specifically between ag vendors and food producing vendors. And at that point, I was making just sweet and salty popcorn. Now we've got over 50 flavors. But back then,
Shout out caramel. Sorry to interrupt.
for many years, we only did the sweet and salty because we were making it in person. And so I challenged myself when we were coming up with this idea. We call it the Blue Ribbon Challenge at the market. Allie Cat, she has a food truck at the market called Alligator's Grilled Cheese. And she would buy her greens from Elemental Farms and then serve a salad, for example. So I challenged myself to try and do the same thing, but with popcorn. So we came up with our dill pickle popcorn, and we added fresh herbs and chives into our popcorn, and then kind of had to use a bit of my food background in how to get that dill pickle flavor to stick to the popcorn. But that's just like another example of how the community kind of is always backing us.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So in a way that you've been able to give back to the community and they've been able to give back to you. And it just comes full circle. That's great. So Ben, I want to talk to you a little bit about the community that you're creating with your new app, and specifically related to tourism. And this is a bit of a plug, but can you tell us a bit about how you're engaging the community and the people who live here and tourism operators?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the word community to us is so multifaceted. Like everybody who is a core client or customer of Neighbourly North, we try to build them into our own community. We try to connect our guests, the travelers, with the community at large. And yeah, I suppose one big step we've taken forward recently is with the Neighbourly North guest app. So essentially, when we started out the business, we were using less software and we had paper guest books, welcome to Whitehorse. This is where you can go to get a good coffee or a bite to eat, a good hiking spot. And we essentially digitized all of it. And within there, we've built out this little affiliate program where tourism operators, retail, food service, transportation, they can all, tell their story directly to those travelers in the way that they want. And so we're kind of taking a bigger step to become more closely aligned with all the other players in the tourism space and just participating a bit more in that community.
That's great. I can't wait to see that.
Super cool.
Very, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And Joella, so you moved back to Mayo in 2003.
Uh-huh.
And you moved back to reconnect with the land and to reconnect with your grandma and the people who raised you. Can you tell me a bit about how the community supported you and how you have been supporting the community? And for anyone who's been to Mayo and been to Raven's Landing, that's one big way. So I'd love to hear a bit about the community.
Yeah, so I guess I moved there. My background is in community development and environmental science, and so I went back to work for my First Nation and worked there for many years, and eventually leading the Heritage and Culture Department, so very much about reconnecting our people back to the land and water and culture so that we can be better decision makers. And so at a time when I was doing that work, I also felt like there were so many gaps in the community, I guess, and so I wanted to have some kind of business where I could employ more people and just use that. And that's when the opportunity came up to buy the business. And so what I didn't really know is how much that would transform, I guess, right? And that how important it was and how much I would be supported when I started using the language in products and when I started sharing cultural knowledge and sharing stories from the land and that kind of thing, how much that resonated with people and how much people don't know about the community of Mayo, that it's off the beaten path and known for so much mining and resource extraction industry when there really is so much more, and that wanted to be able to share the stories of the people and that kind of thing. And so being able to use my little product to help do that really grew a lot.
Your little product.
My little product.
I would just like to shout out that you have 17,000 followers on Instagram, so your little product is doing big things. And one place you're doing that, Joella,
Oh God, don't put up TikTok.
is on TikTok.
This is so embarrassing.
I'm sorry. And then, so what I want to highlight here is that Joella uses her platform on TikTok. So I'm
just
sorry.
went red. Yeah, it's okay.
I'm sorry. I did warn you about this. Uses her platform to showcase her business. She uses her platform to showcase the Yukon and bring awareness to Mayo with the parties that have the heavy equipment at the bonfires. And then also to do good, as we can see on the left here, and to showcase the amazing and important work that you're doing in the town itself. So we have community, we have the different ways that community can be shown on platforms like TikTok that I think a lot of us, myself included, sometimes feel are a little bit shallow. It can be a lot more than that. So I want to change gears here one more time. In tourism, we often see, I work with a lot of digital clients, a lot of who are in this room, and one of the biggest barriers is to becoming digitally proficient and digitally active online is time and money. So what should I be telling my clients who come to me and say, I don't have time, I don't have staff, I don't have money, I don't know what to do, so I can't do anything? Can you give some best practices, Katie, anything you've learned along the way?
If you don't have time or money,
How about, let's start with, if you don't have time, how do you, what's your number one piece of advice for someone who feels like they're lacking in time but wants to get started on social media? Let's narrow it down.
Okay, specifically on social media.
Let's start with that.
Nobody has time for social media, but we all waste our time on social media. Also, I feel like, so I've kind of, I guess I started using Instagram as like with a personal profile, just experimenting with it and connecting with friends and family. Then I started a business profile and started like really pushing the popcorn, and like everything was popcorn pictures. And now I feel like I've kind of come back and realized that people don't need to be seeing popcorn all the time. They really just want to see like, who are you? And what are you doing every day? And that kind of stuff. So if you don't have time, like, use it to your best advantage. So if you do have time, focus on being your most authentic self through social media and sharing the things that you want to share. If you don't have time, maybe you don't need to put as much effort into it as you think you do. If you don't have money for professional photos, then you don't have money for professional photos. It's not going to make or break your business. We've all got to start somewhere, right? Yeah.
Thank you. And Joella, I want to come back to you quickly for a second. What would be your number one tip for managing your social media? So you've got a presence on Instagram, you've got a presence on TikTok, you've got a presence on Facebook. I want to go to time again. How do you manage that?
I spend a lot of time, researching, but also scrolling a lot, trying to see what other people are doing and taking little online courses and that kind of thing. But lately, it's just so much about rebatching content. There's that, everything is content, but just trying to record so much on video and then finding out different ways to use it on Instagram versus TikTok, your Facebook, those kinds of things. So, and just using it in different ways because they all have different, I have totally different followers on TikTok than I do on Instagram and Facebook, right? And so paying attention to who those markets are and then how to that. But that's a lot, and honestly, I don't know how I got that many, because I still feel like I don't do it well, which I know is part of the self-esteem part of it, I guess, right? And was really hard to put myself out there, like Katie said, because at first when I started Instagram, I was like, okay, pretty lovely pictures of soap, everything curated, white background, and then, you start watching, it's like, oh, but that's actually not what is driving the algorithm and engagement. It's people wanted to see me, people wanted to see the North, Canada's Yukon, these unknown places and the -50 and all of that kind of stuff. So it's okay, but then trying to make that connection back there. So I try now to be more deliberate in what I'm posting. But when I first started, I think I was just I got to post to get out there. You have to find those things. And I think it's also, for me, about collaborating with other businesses who have similar values inside the Yukon and outside the Yukon, and trying to amplify and elevate each other as small businesses.
That's great. So we've heard from these three panelists a lot about exporting and selling their products inside the Yukon and outside of the Yukon. Ben, can you speak a little bit to the research that drives, I'm assuming that drives your advertising, and you don't need to tell us exactly what it is, but how much does research and target markets and sort of the analytics piece drive what you do on social media?
Yeah, to a certain extent, we've got, Google Analytics and all those other kind of dashboards set up. So, we have an idea of where our customers are coming from. But I'd say, you know, the most important source of information is all of our historical data. Who are our customers? You know, we have a massive database where we can analyze it and reanalyze it for different parts of the year, different kinds of infrastructure, different destinations. And yeah, I guess, you know, that for us has seriously influenced over time, I think, the brand voice and the exact approach in terms of understanding, you know, who is coming up to Whitehorse. You know, there's not that many young people, you know, like under 30 traveling up to Whitehorse. And so, of course, you know, the marketing and the branding that we do is shaped by that.
So I'm assuming you focus mostly on Facebook.
Yeah, we're on just about everything now. I also have professional help. I don't do my own marketing. You know, Julie, she's fantastic at building that out. But yeah, we're doing, you know, sophisticated paid search, social media, including, you know, LinkedIn, for example, which not everybody's on, and most traditional channels as well.
So you're focusing on the markets that lie both within the Yukon and without of the Yukon, and you're using the analytics to drive that. Katie, I know that your story of your product itself started in local grocery stores like Riverside and Independent. I still get all of my popcorn from those places and the market. Did you start to see a shift at a certain point where you noticed your product being bought or a demand being created outside of the Yukon? And when was that?
Well, I've definitely, like, I dive into the Facebook ads, I learn everything about Ads Manager, and then I back off and I don't touch it for 6 months. And same thing with, like, my more organic posts, like, I'll be very present and then I won't be. So I have a bit of a different story than Ben. Like, I feel like my business has still maintained that, like, organic growth, and maybe that's why we haven't just, like, exploded outside of the Yukon yet. But yeah, when I am reaching out for new wholesale customers outside of the territory, I'm still doing that, like calling them up or like, hey, my family's got this business in Red Deer and you guys got a brewery and like you guys need popcorn. And so I'm still very much like the face behind the business and kind of growing it the more organically slow way than the paid ads way.
That's great. And Ben, just to shout you out one more time on your travels, but you told me that the first step for you for starting your business and your website and getting it up and running was coming back and just shaking a hand. So it sounds like that's still very much true for everyone. And Joella, we chatted briefly about how it was actually COVID-19 that kind of propelled your export growth, and that was a really challenging time for a lot of every tourism operator. And it sounds like you were able to pivot a little bit during that time and focus outward. Can you tell us about how that happened?
Yeah, I mean, my online sales were definitely starting to grow before the pandemic, but saw such a huge shift afterwards outside of the Yukon that I did market towards Yukoners and doing lots of home delivery in Whitehorse and in the communities and that kind of thing, but huge shift across Canada. And then once the pandemic started to wind down, what I saw was more gift shops across Canada wanting to buy my stuff. So online sales slowed down, but gift shops across Canada went up as more people were out traveling and wanting to buy local in those places. But I don't market towards gift shops at all. I don't, partly because right now it's still hard to keep up with the orders that I have, I guess. But I don't say no. You know, if a gift shop reaches out, we just hustle a little bit harder, I guess, to get it done. But I don't know that I feel ready to start marketing towards other wholesalers in a big way yet. That's probably just my own thing, but.
Yeah, fair enough. So I would like to start wrapping up so we can have some time for questions, but just a couple of things that we've heard from our panelists today, and thank you so much for being here. Paring down, so doing what you can do. If you're short on time, focus on what you can control, focus on what you have at hand. Don't go too big too soon. Katie reminded us of that when she talked about, you know, making sure that you're not getting hung up on not having a professional photographer for your products. Start with what you can do. And starting with relationships. So all three of these panelists started by shaking hands, calling people, focusing on the community, and letting the community give back to them, and that's helped in a big way. Using the tools at hand to do business, but also to tell your story. For those who attended the branding workshop with Matt over in the Yukonville classroom, that was probably a topic that was covered as well. And being yourself and letting your brand story shine through the digital aspect and also what you offer. So I'd like to open up the floor for questions, if anyone has any. I see some hands for our lovely panelists.
I am kind of curious about your business then in terms of what is your unique selling proposition that's different than Airbnb or, what makes you different? I'm actually not that.
Yeah, the answer is it depends. It depends on which customer we're talking about. And so for, a consumer traveler on vacation, the distinct value proposition is way different than corporate travel or medical travel or even the Yukoners that end up renting the spaces out. And if you hear our ads on the radio, we like to say we're the best of both worlds. We're the best of the Airbnb experience combined with the best of the hotel experience. And so Airbnbs are incredibly popular, but there's a lot wrong with them still. And so there's a lot of sides to the ways we think about solving for those issues. But what the consumer, the end user sees that's better about us than Airbnb primarily comes down to a really high level of service. You can get 24/7 customer service from your cell phone, essentially having an instantaneous conversation with a digital concierge, which you can't get with Airbnb because, people have day jobs. And then all of the properties are also standardized with luxury linen sets, towel sets, Netflix, 100 megabits per second internet. And we basically just tried to highly professionalize that kind of experience and combine it with a hotel level of service.
Thank you. Any other questions? Kat.
Each of your business names and brands include, in one way or another, a mention of the North and the place that these businesses run at. Klondike, Kettle Corn, Neighbourly, North, Yukon soaps. How important is the Yukon to your personal brands of businesses?
Hugely important, I would say. Yeah, there's people, they want to know about the North, like Danny's followers too. There's like this curiosity and this sense of magic up here, and that's what people are curious about. So I'd say it's pretty important that people know where we are and also what we're doing up here when we're not making popcorn. It's definitely part of our story.
I guess for myself, we're also in NWT, but when we're hosting people in Whitehorse, one of the things we like to say to all of our guests is, whether you're a foodie or an aspiring naturalist or a culture seeker or whatever you're into, hospitality is about doing a lot of different things, right? We want to connect them with that Yukon experience, whatever it is that they're personally really passionate about. And then, of course, we've always prioritized Yukoners as our customers in terms of making sure that, they're getting the best price, the best kind of terms and flexibility.
Yeah, and I think for me, so I changed the name, but I didn't realize actually how important it was. One of my things was, because the person I was working with said, what about the Mayo Soap Company? But at the time, and I still do have a vision eventually of little manufacturing places in other communities, not just in Mayo. And so I thought, let's make it broader, the Yukon. But what I didn't realize is when I actually changed the name of one of the soaps to include Yukon, then it totally took off. And definitely like my top seller products that all have Yukon in it, like it's insane. I think it's like that deep fascination, interest, connection, all of those things that we all are and aspire to be, like really resonates in that name. Yeah, and connects people.
Thank you, Kat. Any other questions for these lovely panelists? They know so much. Hello.
What do you guys, what do you plan to do, like with the way we're moving towards the change in the mentions or any?
We're just learning about the
excitement?
algorithm, like AI.
I just got onto hashtags. Just kidding.
Maybe you have more
Yeah.
knowledge on the AI stuff.
Yeah, in terms of like our third-party software, we don't have any active AI happening like chatbots, but we are experimenting with ChatGPT internally, just seeing how it can add value. And I think one of the obvious ways worth sharing is some of the staff at Neighbourly North are new Canadians. They're English second language, and so using AI at least to improve their communications with guests has been a really easy win.
What is ChatGPT, Ben?
It's about 60 days old. It's a new AI tool that just got released. It's completely free, and yeah, it's like Google, but
The new
much
Google.
better, much better.
So everyone here who has a business can look up ChatGPT after this and add it to their websites. Amazing, a takeaway. Thank you. Any other questions?
I guess this is a little, not so, what's e-commerce? I work for the Wildlife Preserve, and we have a small gift shop, and we are so grateful for locals and what they do in different ways, like Katie, and we just brought on popcorn. So like providing wholesale, work with Vanessa for wholesale as well, to like add to the visitor experience when they're on our site. But we don't have e-commerce because it felt like it didn't make any sense to sell things that, like from our own site, that were already being done by these other companies. We've had a really successful bout of products from Yukon artist collaborations. So we reached out to specific people to do bulas. So we have Nikki Perry did these like beautiful hand-painted things, and then we put them on bulas. And we worked with Ted Tucker to do T-shirts. And they're all really like exclusive to the Wildlife Preserve, so you can't get them anywhere else. And then now, it's a great problem, I guess, when people want them, and they're not here, and they want them to be like shipped. And I don't live or work in town, and our location is not in town. And this beast of like e-commerce, now that we're kind of set up to do our own thing, and we have this like really wonderful array of products that is very exclusive, I just am like, how do you even deal with e-commerce, like with the bringing it into town
Yeah.
and the shipping, and everybody wants free shipping, and that is like a barrier often to like hitting pay in your cart. And so like in the north here, like how do you deal with all of that given how much more expensive it is than some of your southern competitors potentially to the
It is a
online
beast.
market?
It absolutely is a beast. It's like, I don't know. I'll see what Joella has to say.
I cry a lot.
Yeah. I remember actually running into you, and you were like, "I'm gonna shut down my web store. Like I'm done. I
it's
need a break from it." I'm like, "No, don't do it."
Yeah, I forgot about that.
It is way more work than you think it's going to be. Yeah, having wholesalers, having you bring in a bag of popcorn and selling it for me is way easier than an email coming into from my website, and then filling out an invoice, and then packing that, and then printing off a shipping label, and then taking half of my profits to pay to Canada Post. Like, it is definitely a beast, and I think you guys are a nonprofit, right? Yeah, if retail is not your main priority, it's going to be special for people to come out to the Wildlife Preserve and collect their bula.
But we're at this point where it might be fairly special, because
Yeah.
like it is not our main experience, but somehow it is now turned into a significant revenue
Right.
generator.
It's-
and these really exclusive artist collaborations
Yeah.
that people really want, and I'm like, oh, can you not just fly here?
Yeah, I don't know. Like if you're a nonprofit and you're doing it to raise a little bit of funds for your wildlife preserve, but you're also working with artists, maybe the artist can sell them for
Yeah.
you.
So you're saying it's not worth it, great.
I am saying, yeah, not, like, I don't want to say it's not worth it, but it's way more work than you might, like, it's a bigger thing to take on than you might think it is.
The original intention was to get people to come out to the wildlife preserve more and
Yeah.
take a special thing home with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Into an extra revenue stream.
Yeah,
on its own.
yeah,
And it did
Decide we
change.
want to do that, put
Yeah.
that infrastructure in or not.
Yeah, it definitely did change how we interacted with our local community because
yeah,
they were then interested in coming, especially during COVID, to
Yeah.
purchase things that they would never purchase from our gift shop before because
yeah,
they didn't
Yeah.
want to or it wasn't appealing to them.
And I would just add that if you do it, get a good system in place. Like we have a dedicated shipping area that has all of our labels, all of our boxes. So we have a system, we do it 1 day a week and that kind of thing. And we also use it as an opportunity to educate our customers, like that it's not same day shipping. It does cost more. And we have a little thing like it's coming by snowshoe, by sled, by dog team, da da
like
da
that.
da. Yeah, like that we are super rural, remote. That is part of your experience and why you're buying from us. And we
Yeah.
thank you, and it'll be worth it. And a package has never, knock on wood, never not made it. It's taken over a
Yeah.
month, but it's never not made it. But using that as the story, and they're like, oh my God, thank you so much. We can't wait, right? But it was like using that as an education piece, but also having the systems like the Shopify and the thermal printer to print out the addresses. Because before that, we were still like handwriting everything
Yeah.
and searching for packing stuff, and it's like we just had to get our butts in gear to have dedicated shipping. So it is a lot, and I would really like do the math on whether it's worth it or not and part of your.
It's probably like the minimum that you're looking at to sending a package out is around $25. So you got to take that off of your price too. Yeah.
I would love to build, thank you. I would love to build off of that question actually and ask Joella directly to you. How do you manage the different customer expectations through e-commerce? So you have international customers in the States and customers in all the way up here in the Yukon. How do you manage that remotely? Curious.
Do you mean like behind the scenes or just in terms of like conversation?
Behind the scenes and with customer service, different expectations about shipping pricing, for instance.
Yeah, so I hired someone because I would get too upset or take it personally, I guess, right? And so having somebody to do that, I say that and I heard someone say, oh, but I actually wasn't getting that many bad things. Like also knock on wood, I don't get that many except for like a product might leak or something. But that happens with Amazon also, I keep telling myself. But you know, having somebody to be that buffer, I guess, right? And she forwards the questions because otherwise I would be like, I feel so bad. You know, the soap was whatever, the bath salts opened in the box, you know, like those kind of things. So having somebody to manage that a little bit. But I guess it's also going back to educating and raising awareness about where it's coming from and how long it might take, I think. Is that kind of your...
Yes,
kind of,
that answers my question
Yeah.
perfectly. Because another big thing that we talk about in the tourism space is managing bad reviews on TripAdvisor. And not that I expect that you have many bad reviews, but it's definitely a big conversation, and it would be great one day to address that. But we are almost out of time. I'd love to leave a little bit of time to get some more snacks and make our way to our workshops. At 2 p.m. So I'd like to say a great big thank you to Ben, Joella, and Katie for not only sharing their tips and tricks with us, but also letting us into their stories a little bit. So I'd love to get a round of applause for these three amazing panelists.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming. Fill your boots, eat lots of food, and we will go to our workshops for 2. If you don't know which workshop you're in, come see me.
Thanks, Avery.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.